Is a degree or a certificate to say that you can do a thing absolutely essential? No. There's no two ways about the answer. The answer is no. However, it does significantly increase the likelihood that you have the skill you claim to. So if you are someone who's trying to recruit people, for example, for a job, and you say, hey, I'm only looking for people who have a degree in this thing, who have done this specific course. The reason they're saying that is they have found that there's a correlation between the people who have done that thing and the likelihood that that person is able to do the job. Let's imagine, and actually let's just use this example, I'm hiring an SDR and a closer, SDR closer / setter right now. And I was yesterday speaking to a potential candidate who had done a closing course. It's about 5 to 6 grand to learn to close, because that as a skill is not really done in the UK. It's not something you can learn at school. It's something that you can learn by doing, but it's slow. And that's why we are looking for people who have done that, because they know what they're doing, they back themselves to do it, and will get paid proportionally more for us not having to train them. But if they don't perform, they get nothing, because they're on essentially only commission. Right, so I spoke to this guy and it turned out that he actually hadn't done the program. He was working with a guy who had. Now, I then said, okay, this is fine, right? This guy has recommended you, let's have a look. What sort of closing frameworks do you know how to use? What have you learnt about? What have you been working on? And there wasn't a robust answer. And then we dove in deep about like what sales actually is. What's the purpose of the call? How do you go about doing it? Why? What's the thought process behind each part of what you say and how you say it? And it just became obvious that the significant lack of volume and experience that had been done so far meant there was also a lack of skill. And if he had a certificate to say, I've gone through this thing, I'm at this base level, I know what I'm doing, I just don't have the experience yet, that would have come through in the discussion. Now, if he had that knowledge without the certificate, that would have come through in the discussion, right? Would I rather take someone who has done 1,000 high ticket sales or someone who hasn't, has a piece of paper? I'm taking the guy who's done it before, right? So all a piece of paper does is it shows your likelihood of being good at the thing. Now, so why would you actually do that over just learning yourself? Because it's going to be way cheaper. And the thing is, it's in the interest of a company who sells information like that to create something which removes all the guesswork and it gets you there in the straightest line possible. Now, you might notice when you go on courses like these, when you go and learn stuff, and you'll remember this from school, you're doing a lot of stuff that you don't think is necessary. You're spending so much time on things. You're like, can we just move faster? And you can. You can definitely do that if you pay for like private tuition where you're saying, okay, I want you to take me through this thing faster. But generally, for something like that, you're going to be paying much less than what a private tutor would cost. And so you will follow a curriculum and then you will be stuck to that. It has its pros and cons. So the example I'm going to use now is that this last week I've done something called a direct access course, which is to get your motorbike license in like a week. Now, I could already ride a motorbike, and this course is for people who have never ridden one to being able to pass the test and get their license. And the reason I chose to do it is I thought there was going to be more to it. Honestly, I didn't really know or understand how the tests worked, where I needed to go for what were the requirements, and I thought, you know what, I'll just pay someone else who's done the whole thing for me. And there were pros and cons on both sides. The biggest con was that we moved really slowly. We moved at the pace of the slowest person in the group, which meant about, I think it was a 5 or 6, yeah, it was a 6-day course. I think realistically I could have got to the end result where I am now in 2. If I'd have someone move at my pace. Now, you could pay a lot more for that. I paid like £1,300, right? Would have been cheaper to pay a guy, one person, to say, hey, you and me, 2 days, let's make sure I get the point where I need to be, right? But I didn't know how long it was going to take. And that's what you pay for, essentially. So I also did a similar thing with coding, and it was wicked. Coding was really confusing. It's just I didn't know where to start. It's not that I couldn't learn. It was just there wasn't an efficient pathway. And what's fun in both of the experience I've done this, when you're ahead of the group, when you're able to learn faster than other people, gives you the opportunity to go above and beyond. And even though it's inefficient, i.e. you still take more time than you need to if you're a fast learner because you're going at the pace of everyone else, absolute time is still probably the fastest route. So would I have found someone to teach me, figured out what the tests were, actually have them booked all within a week and a bit? Probably not. Like, it's really unlikely that I would have gone and found all of those things. But by being forced to spend an entire week, it's way more volume than I actually needed to do. And now it would be unreasonable that I don't pass the tests, right? And it's the same thing that I did with the coding course. Like, we could have covered the content that we covered much faster if I wasn't with a group of other people who weren't at the same starting point. But it gave me the opportunity to really push outside and try new things and spend more time on things that I didn't realise were essential. And still, the absolute time spent of getting the skill, i.e. from, if you measure from today, what day you pass the test, what day you get the certification, it's still probably the fastest route, even though it's inefficient. And so that's probably my biggest takeaway from this is you don't need a certificate to say that you can do something. Or sometimes you do. Like driving a license, you have to have the certificate to go on the road. And so if you have the means to get it done and the goal is the fastest absolute time possible, not the most efficient, the absolute fastest, which is generally all we really care about, then pay for the thing, do the course, get the certification. If it's relevant. So here's another one. Should you go and do a 3 or 4 year university degree to learn to become a product manager or like a project manager? No, because you're probably not going to come out of that knowing how to manage a project. The absolute fastest way to do that is to go and do it. Is go and get a job somewhere where projects need to be managed and be a cog in the wheel and spend all your spare time outside of you doing the job chasing after it, trying to figure out how do you do this thing. And I think that's the best way to go about these things. There you go. My thoughts on, is a piece of paper essential? Definitely not, but it does increase the likelihood you can do the thing. Prime example, most people on the road can't drive very well. That's not true. Most people are average drivers. There's a few who questionably shouldn't have passed, and it's the same with certificates. There's a few who questionably shouldn't have the certificate. But on the whole, if you pick someone who doesn't have a license compared to someone who does, how effective are they going to be at driving? The person with a license is probably going to be better. So there we go. If this is what you needed to go and sign up to something to actually learn to do it, then crack on. You only live once, so the earlier you do it, the sooner you get the return on that, and the more time you have in your life to have the return on whatever that certificate is. There you go. Have a great one, guys. Peace.